US launches wave of airstrikes in Yemen. Deadly Israeli strikes mar fragile Gaza truce. Good afternoon and Salam Malaysia Madani. This is World Today. I'm Shuhaida Arifin. The first US strikes against Yemen's Houthis since President Donald Trump took office in January killed at least 21 people as Washington warned Iran to stop backing the group. There were 3 explosions before plumes of smoke came from a residential district in the north of the capital Sana'a. Security forces immediately cordoned off the area. Strikes were also reported in Yemen's northern Sadr region, killing at least 10 people and wounded others. The Houthis, Al-Masirah TV station said, an American-British aggression raided a residential neighborhood in the Shu'ub district in Sana'a. There was no immediate comment from the British authorities. However, in a post on social media, Trump vowed to use overwhelming lethal force until they have achieved their objective, citing the Houthis' threats against Red Sea shipping. Trump also warned Iran that it must immediately cut support to the group. The Houthis hit back in a statement on Al-Masirah, vowing that the strikes will not pass without response. The group said its Yemeni armed forces are fully prepared to confront escalation with escalation. The unfolding strikes represent the biggest US military operation in West Asia since Trump took office in January. At least 9 people, including journalists, were killed in Israeli strikes in Gaza attacks, which could further endanger the fragile truce in the Palestinian territory. Gaza Civil Defense spokesman Mahmoud Bassal said the killings were as a result of the occupation targeting a vehicle with a drone in the town of Beit Lahia, coinciding with artillery shelling on the same area. The Palestinian Journalists Syndicate said among those killed were an editor and 3 photojournalists. It explained that the attack targeted a charity vehicle where the journalists were preparing reports and documentaries on the work of charitable organizations during the month of Ramadan. Following the reported strikes, the deadliest since the ceasefire took hold on 19 January, Hamas accused Israel of a blatant violation of the truce, which largely halted more than 15 months of fighting. Hamas has said the occupation has committed a horrific massacre in the northern Gaza Strip by targeting a group of journalists and humanitarian workers in a blatant violation of the ceasefire agreement. The group called the attack a dangerous escalation, adding that it reaffirms Israel's intention to backtrack on the ceasefire agreement and intentionally obstruct any opportunity to complete the agreement and carry out the prisoner swap. On a related note, Hamas has said the ball is in Israel's court after offering to release an Israeli US hostage and return the remains of 4 others as part of the Gaza truce talks. The first phase of the truce, which began in January, ended on 1st March without agreement on next steps. Hamas said it wants to solidify the ceasefire agreement and force Israel to implement its terms, accusing Israel of delaying its enforcement. The group pointed to the ongoing blockade of humanitarian aid entering Gaza since 2nd of March. A Hamas political bureau member said the proposal to release 21-year-old soldier Eden Alexander and return to the remains of 4 other Israeli-American hostages was part of a unique agreement. In exchange, Israel would free Palestinian prisoners, with the numbers still under negotiation. The official said the proposed exchange was conditioned with simultaneously starting negotiations for the implementations of the truce second phase, with the talks ending within a 50-day period. The proposals also called for the immediate opening of all border crossings to allow the entry of humanitarian aid into Gaza and the withdrawal of the Israeli army from the Philadelphia corridor. A blast in the Syrian coastal city of Latakia killed at least 10 people, with state media reported that it was triggered by a scrap dealer mishandling unexploded ordnance. Syrian Arab News Agency earlier reported that the death toll from the explosion at a hardware store in Latakia's southern neighborhood of Al Rimal had been 8. The news agency said 3 children and a woman were among the victims of the blast at the store inside a 4-story building. At least 14 civilians were also injured, including 4 children. The news agency also said that the detonation occurred when the scrap dealer mishandled an unexploded munition in an attempt to recover the metal. A report by non-governmental organization Humanity and Inclusion had warned last month of the danger posed by unexploded munitions left over from Syria's civil war that erupted in 2011. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said Western allies other than the US were stepping up preparations to support Ukraine in the event of a ceasefire with Russia, with defense chiefs set to firm up robust plans next week. Starmer hosted a virtual meeting to marshal more pressure on Russian President Vladimir Putin to accept a ceasefire deal being pushed by US President Donald Trump and to gather commitments to help secure any agreements. Around 24 leaders took part, including those from Germany, France, Italy, Canada and Australia, as well as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and NATO's Secretary General. Starmer said that the coalition of the willing had reaffirmed its commitment both to helping Ukraine resist Russia's invasion and to securing any ceasefire that emerges from the Trump's overtures to Russia.
We will keep increasing the pressure on Russia, keep the military aid flowing to Ukraine, and keep tightening restrictions on Russia's economy to weaken Putin's war machine and bring him to the table.
Starmer said the militaries will meet on Thursday in the United Kingdom to put strong and robust plans in place to swing in behind a peace deal and guarantee Ukraine's future security. Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron has ruled out bringing back mandatory military service, but said he wanted to mobilize society in the face of Russian aggression and would make an announcement in the coming weeks. Macron said the return of compulsory military service is not a realistic option. He said France no longer had the logistic to reintroduce conscription, which ended in 2001. Macron said France is going to look at ways to mobilize civilians, adding that he wanted to consolidate the mobilization of society in the face of crisis. European countries, including France, have been debating reinstating compulsory military service to boost their defenses in the face of Russian aggression. Fears about the strength of NATO have surged further after US President Donald Trump said Europe must take care of its own security. According to a recent poll, 61% of French people are in favor of re-establishing some form of compulsory military service. Macron has been looking for ways to encourage young French people to serve. In January, he asked the government and the army to submit proposals by May on how to mobilize more young volunteers to back up the armed forces in the case of need. Still ahead, at least 33 dead as tornadoes ravage central southern US. United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres said the organization is exploring the possibility of a humanitarian aid channel from Bangladesh to Myanmar. He said there is a need to intensify humanitarian aid inside Myanmar to create a condition that will make the return of the Rohingya successful.
If circumstances allow, to have also humanitarian aid channeled from Bangladesh. But that is obviously a matter that would require the authorization and the cooperation of the parties to the conflict.
Guterres said it is essential to increase pressure from all of the neighbours in order to guarantee that fighting ends and the way towards democracy finally established. Asked if dialogue with the Arakan Army, an ethnic minority group in Myanmar, is essential for the repatriation of Rohingyas, Guterres acknowledged that in the past, relations with the Arakan Army have been difficult, but said necessary discussions must take place. He added engaging with the Arakan Army is important as sanctions against the group would require the UN Security Council's approval, which could prove difficult to obtain. The Arakan Army is engaged in a fierce fight with the military for control of Rakhine, where it seized swathes of territory in the past year, all but cutting off the state capital, Sittwe. A federal judge has temporarily blocked any deportations that would occur under US President Donald Trump's invocation of a wartime law to expedite the expulsion of alleged members of the Venezuelan gang Trandegua. Trump invoked earlier in the day the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 against the group, saying that the country was facing an invasion from a criminal organization that has been linked to kidnapping, extortion, organized crime and contract killings. Hours afterwards, Judge James Bosberg issued a temporary restraining order for 14 days. Bosberg said the act does not provide a basis for the president's proclamation, given that the terms invasion and predatory incursion really relate to the hostile acts perpetrated by any nation and commensurate to war. The act, which has only been used in times of war, could allow the presidents to bypass the due process rights of migrants categorized as threats and rapidly deport them. Under Trump's proclamation, any Venezuelan citizens aged 14 and older identified as member of the gang who are currently in the United States and do not possess naturalized or lawful permanent resident status may be subject to apprehension, detention, and removal as alien enemies. At least 33 people were killed and dozens more injured when tornadoes and violent storms ranked across the central and southern United States. Local police said 8 people died in Kansas in a crash involving more than 50 vehicles caused by low visibility during a severe dust storm. Missouri State Highway Patrol confirmed 12 storm-related fatalities and shared images of boats piled on top of one another at a marina destroyed by the weather. The state police reported downed trees and power lines, as well as damage to buildings, with some areas severely impacted by tornadoes, thunderstorms, and large hail. Further south in Texas, local authorities said 4 people had died in vehicle accidents linked to dust storms and fires that reduced visibility on the roads. In the neighboring state of Arkansas, officials said 3 people had died and 29 had been injured in the storm. At least 200,000 homes and businesses across the central United States were without power by Saturday evening. The Central and Southern American states of Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas get the most violent tornadoes due to unique geographical and meteorological conditions. Cuba remained largely without power yesterday after the island's grid collapsed the night before, knocking out electricity for 10 million people and raising fresh questions about the viability of its antiquated generating system. At sunrise, the island's grid operator said it was generating only a trickle of electricity, around 225 megawatts, or less than 10% of total demand, enough to cover some vital services like hospitals, water supply, and food production centers. Officials said they had begun the process of firing up the country's decades-old generation plants, but gave no timeline for restoring service. Cuba's grid failed after an aging component of a transmission line at a substation in Havana shorted, beginning a chain reaction that completely shut down power generation across the island. The grid collapse follows a string of nationwide blackouts late last year that plunged Cuba's frail power generating systems into near total disarray, stressed by fuel shortages, natural disasters, and economic crisis. Most Cubans outside the capital Havana have already been living for months with rolling blackouts that peaked at 20 hours a day in recent weeks. Elsewhere, an oil spill in northwestern Ecuador has turned a river black, prompting authorities to declare an environmental emergency and order residents to ration drinking water. The spill, believed to have been caused when a landslide ruptured a major oil pipeline, has contaminated a section of the Esmeraldas River in the province of the same name. The Emergency Operations Committee in the provincial capital, also called Esmeraldas, declared an environmental emergency over concerns about water quality. Vilko Vilasis, mayor of the city of more than 200,000, said the leak had caused unprecedented damages. His office halted the diversion of river water to an aqueduct supplying the city and urged people to take ration water. State-owned Petro Ecuador said it was working to address the emergency at the pipeline, part of the Trans-Ecuadorian pipeline system, which transport crude oil from the Amazon. The company has not estimated the volume of oil spilled. Chinese authorities have released a set of guidelines aimed at tackling the potential misuse of artificial intelligence AI and the spread of the false information. The regulations jointly issued by the Cyberspace Administration of China, the Industry and Information Technology Ministry, the Public Security Ministry, and the National Radio and Television Administration will take effect on 1st September. For content generated by deep synthesis technologies that might confuse or mislead the public, explicit labels must be placed in a reasonable position to ensure public awareness. Explicit labels are those applied within the generated content or use interface presented in forms such as text, sound, or graphic that are clearly perceptible to users. Additionally, the guideline requires that implicit labels be added to the metadata of generated content files. These labels should include details about the content's attributes, the service provider's name or code, and content identification numbers. Next up in sports, Muhammad Shafirdaus wins UCI Track Nations Cup gold. National track cyclist Muhammad Shafirdaus Shahrom made waves by winning the men's K-ring gold medal at the UCI Track Nations Cup Championships in Konya, Turkey early this morning. The 29-year-old cyclist showcased his skills, maneuvering through a tight pack of 4 riders before powering into the final corner to claim the title at the Konya Velodrome. The victory also marked the first gold medal for the cyclist at the UCI Track Nations Cup campaign, highlighting a significant milestone in his career. Olympic bronze medalist Sébastien Veguer from France claimed the silver medal, while Japan's Shinji Nakano took home the bronze. Top seed Shi Yuqi edged a thrilling semi-final against Chinese compatriot Li Shifeng 21-9, 2022, 21-19 to reach a 4th All England Open final. The world number 1 was pushed all the way by Li, who recovered from a dominant opening game from Shi to threaten an upset. The 2018 winner and world number one dominated the opening game but was made to work harder in the next two as Lee fought his way back. Xi's only previous All England success came back in 2018, but he is a big favourite to land a second title today against Taiwan's Lee Chia-hao. Xi will face Chia-hao in the final after he came from behind to beat unseeded Frenchman Alex Lenier 19-21, 21-14, 21-17. Meanwhile, the final of the mixed doubles will be an all-Chinese affair with Guo Xinhua and Chen Fanghui squaring off against Feng Yanqi and Wei Yaxin. 7-seeds Guo and Chen defeated compatriots Jiang Shenbang and Huang Dongping 21-15, 24-26, 21-16, while 5th seeds Feng and Wei were too strong for South Korea's Lee Jong-min and Che Yu-jung 21-14, 21-18. In the English Premier League news, Manchester City failed to ease fears of missing out on next season's Champions League after twice blowing the lead to draw 2-2 against Brighton. City boss Pep Guardiola said that just qualifying for the Champions League would be a big success after a difficult season for his side used to lifting the league title. Omar Marmoush won the penalty from which Erling Haaland opened the scoring with his 29th goal of the season. However, City's lead lasted only 10 minutes as Pervis Estupiñán curled the free kick in off the post past the leaden-footed Stefan Ortega in the City goal. Marmoush blasted City back in front from long range before half-time. Brighton, though, took just 3 minutes into the second half to level again when Jack Hazelwood's shot was turned into his own net by Abdulkadir Kusanov. A top 5 Premier League finish will almost certainly secure Champions League place in the season, thanks to English clubs' strong performances in European competition. A point leaves City still in 5th place, just 1 point ahead of Brighton in 7th. On to MotoGP, Marc Marquez won the Battle of the Brothers after beating Alex Marquez on the Argentina track sprint race. The 6-time world champion was continuing his dream start to live riding a factory Ducati. After wins in the sprint and race in the season opener in Thailand a fortnight ago, the Spanish star will be hot favourite for today's main event at the Terima Rio Hondo circuit. If successful, it will be the first time the 32-year-old has won the opening 2 races since the 2014 season. Marquez has looked imperious at the second leg of the 2022 race season, topping the times in practice and nailing pole a career's 96th earlier Saturday with a track record. This was his first back-to-back poles since 2019, the season he won the last of his 6 MotoGP titles. And he led a 12-lap dash from start to finish to cement his position at the top of the fledgling riders' title race as he goes in search of his 7th MotoGP crown. Coming up in our offbeat segment, Mysterious Mirrors, marble boulders shine at Desert X. Mysterious metallic mirrors, stacks of imported marble boulders and a 3D printed mud hut appeared in the California desert as the biennial outdoor art festival Desert X returned. The free event, which drew 600,000 visitors in its last edition, sends contemporary art lovers on a treasure hunt to find works scattered across the Coachella Valley, some 160 kilometers east of Los Angeles. French-American artist Sarah Mayohas used intricately curved metallic mirrors to reflect and retract the bright desert sunlight, beaming the words "Truth arrives in slanted beams" across the sides of the Mandarin 120-meter stucco ribbon. A 32-kilometer across the desert, Mexican artist Jose Davila has stacked colossal 16-ton marble boulders that were quarried in the Chihuahua Desert of his nearby home country. The work, which was arranged to invoke megalithic structures like Britain's Stonehenge, is titled The Act of Being Together. Other installations include monorails, Adobe Oasis, which use an enormous robotic arm to 3D print walls made of clay and straw in the Adobe style traditional in the region. Desert Act runs until 11th May this year. Chinese martial arts have long been considered a male-dominated sphere, but a cohort of Generation Z women is challenging that assumption and generating publicity for their particular school of Kung Fu. They include Duan Ruru, who has spent a decade mastering the Kung Fu techniques. The ancient Imei school, where she trains in the mountains of Sichuan, is thought to have historically welcomed a higher proportion of women and girls. But it has not achieved the same level of public fame as other Kung Fu schools such as Shaolin. That is starting to change thanks in part to Duan's 9-woman troupe, Imei Kung Fu Girls, which meshes deaf to sword work with the social media savvy to help put this sector back on the map. In slick videos, the troupe performs everything from combat scenes to flip in front of the Louvre in Paris, often backed by booming hip-hop beats. They also show off their moves alongside branded beverages or cars, though the group declined to comment on whether they make money from advertising. Since their debut last April, they have amassed more than 23 million views and over 1 million followers on Douyin China's version of TikTok. The whir of machines and smell of carved wood hangs in the air of Indian toy workshops in Chanapatna, where around 2,500 artisans are employed in the industry. The centuries-old art form is still in the game despite cheaper plastic alternatives. India's town of Chanapatna is famed for its wood and lacquer toys, carved from ivory wood from a local deciduous tree and dipped in brightly colored dye from natural ingredients, including turmeric and indigo. Rocking horses, baby walkers, and dancing dolls cut from woods are a common sight in workshops in the town, located in the southern state of Karnataka. Rising competitions from mass-produced toys, including cheap replicas made in China, has cast a shadow on the growth of the industry, but it has endured. The town's products saw a surge in interest in 2010 when former US First Lady Michelle Obama bought several of them in the capital New Delhi during an official visit to India. The toys were once all handcuffed, but the use of electric lathe and other machinery has helped to keep the industrial economical.
In 2025, Malaysia opens its doors to ASEAN, a celebration of unity and culture, bringing every moment of ASEAN 2025 to you, only on RTM.
And that wraps up World Today. In our top story, US launches a wave for airstrike in Yemen. Tune into Malaysia Tonight coming up at 8:30 p.m. on TV1 and saluran Berita RTM. Till then, I'm Shuhaida Arifin. From river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Thank you for watching.